The following show features stories from Adra International. Adra is the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, a ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We strive to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and share God's love and compassion to people in every corner of the world. Each story you see in this series represents our mission to change the world, one life at a time. To learn more, please visit us online at adra.org.
Every day, the people living in the villages of Middlebush on the island of Tanna have to walk up to 6 hours to collect the water they need to survive.
So let's say you wake up late. Are there some times that you won't get any water?
Almost 800 million people do not have access to clean water globally.
If you don't have access to clean water, then you can't maintain a certain level of health.
And unlike in the West, where we often think of diarrhea as an inconvenience, in developing countries, diarrhea is deadly, killing over 2,000 children every single day.
And that's why this 1 in 5 number of children who are actually dying from undernutrition is directly attributable to lack of clean water and proper sanitation.
So you can't just go in there, plop a toilet, and say, hey, use it. Why? You have to explain to people, why is this necessary? Why is it important?
Most of the households use open pit, and an open pit is just a dark hole. It attracts insects and animals like cockroaches, and then these insects then walk out from the pit and then they go straight into the kitchens.
But every day the equivalent of 50 jumbo jets crashing and killing everybody on board is equivalent to the number of children who die from preventable diseases, and for many of those children it comes down to fresh potable water.
This world of ours is more beautiful, more complicated, and more inspiring than we could ever imagine. My name is Sanjay, and this is the story of a journey with Adra to serve a hurting world. I've spent the last 6 months seeing a side of our planet that not many people get to see, witnessing the most incredible challenges and the most extraordinary hope. Together, we've got a chance to impact the world in a whole new way. This is A Closer Walk. Vanuatu is a lush tropical paradise made up of 82 islands that sit 1,000 miles northeast of Australia, in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean. The archipelago, created from a series of volcanic eruptions, still has several active volcanoes, which continue to shape the landscape of the islands they formed. For the 222,000 people that call these islands home, it is a mostly peaceful and simple life. On the island of Tanna, there's a small farmer's market where locals come to trade and sell their produce. But life in this tropical paradise can be a challenge for the families that live here. Only about 9% of the steep, rocky terrain is used for agriculture, and there's very little permanent fresh water. It may come as a surprise considering its proximity to the clear, sparkling blue sea, but without proper technology to desalinate the seawater, it is not usable for cooking, cleaning, or drinking.
I think that one of the things that we take for granted is clean, potable water. And yet, there's so much of the world that suffers from it. I remember going into a community once. I said to the people, how many of you have experienced the loss of a child through waterborne disease? Well, everyone put their hand up. So, put your hand down if you only lost one child, or the hand stayed up. 2 children, 3 children.
So in a lot of places, what you see is that people literally just don't live near a clean water source. Or if they do, that water source is used for everything. It's used to wash clothes, it's used to bathe, it's used to feed the animals, it's used for everything.
Sonia Bele is a young mother who lives in Middlebush on the island of Tanna, a remote village that does not have easy access to clean water. Several times each day, she and many others from her village make the long trip to a freshwater spring to collect the water that will be used for everything they do.
There is water, but the water source is quite far, and people have to work, especially women and children, have to walk a long way to carry water.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of people are very touched when they hear about people lacking in water because it's so fundamental. It's just this basic element of life. You know, and it has an incredible impact. Almost 800 million people do not have access to clean water globally.
Lavalokium is the chief of the village where Sonia lives, and he showed me the small spring, which is the primary source of the water for his village and many of the surrounding villages in Middlebush.
About how many people use this water?
1,000.
1,000?
Yes.
Although the spring that the villagers use produces a constant stream of water, it is a precious resource that is not always readily available. If someone uses the water from the spring to bathe, or forgets to return the stopper to the hose running from the source, the reserve of water built up by the spring can run out.
So let's say you wake up late and you come here late. Are there some times that you won't get any water?
When I come here late, the other ones come first and take the water, and the water is finished.
Water is finished?
Yes.
So it's not just always coming.
Yes.
It will finish if you come late.
Water access. Here we never think about it because it's everywhere. But in a lot of places where we work, it isn't everywhere.
84% of the people who lack access to water live in rural areas where they rely on farming and agriculture for their survival. The life of a subsistence farmer is already a challenging one, and around the world in developing countries, the workforce is losing billions and billions of hours collecting water.
So you come 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, you walk half an hour to here, and you have to do this trip 5 times in one day. And this heavy thing. Wow.
Carrying water is a job that everyone in the villages of Middlebush is very familiar with. But most often, the responsibility for collecting and carrying water falls on the women and girls. Girls under the age of 15 are twice as likely as boys to be the family member responsible for fetching water.
Because often it is young girls and women who are fetching the water, who have to walk hours to be able to go and access that water. That time that they're doing to get water is time they could be using in school. It's time they could be using for other things, but they can't, right? Because water is a necessity. So you have a lot of girls who literally can't go to school because if they go to school, who's going to help in the household and who's going to collect this water?
Getting water from a spring that is a 30 or 40-minute walk from your village may not seem like a difficult thing. But when you consider the amount a person, particularly a young child, is able to carry, you realize that in order to have the water they need to survive, they have to make 5 or 6 round trips every single day.
The stories featured in this series represent the mission of Adra International. At Adra, we believe that everyone deserves health, safety, and the ability to provide for their family, regardless of circumstance. Following in Christ's footsteps, we serve our brothers and sisters worldwide through food and clean water access, education, establishing ways to earn an income, and disaster response. To learn more, visit us online at adra.org.
Every day, the people living in the villages of Middlebush on the island of Tanna have to walk up to 6 hours to collect the water they need to survive. Unfortunately, the water that they work so hard to get is often contaminated.
And so what you see is a lot of people who have to walk really long distances just to be able to get water, and then perhaps that water is not even clean, which makes people sick. Now, when you're sick, it's very, very difficult in environments where you already have poor access to health care, for instance, or poor access to nutritious foods to get better. So if you don't have access to clean water, then you can't maintain a certain level of health. If you can't maintain a certain level of health and you have a weakened immune system or you're sick, you can't work. If you can't work, you can't provide for your family. If you can't provide for your family, they suffer, and sometimes they die.
Now, have you seen times where people would get sick from drinking this water?
Yes.
And what usually happens? What usually happens when they get sick? They have stomach pains or?
Sometimes the babies drink the water, that water, and get
Diarrhea.
diarrhea.
And unlike in the West, where we often think of diarrhea as an inconvenience, in developing countries, diarrhea is deadly, killing over 2,000 children every single day, more than AIDS, malaria, and measles combined.
Where there's surface water that can be harvested, we have to make sure that it's clean, because if it's not transported and stored in a way that's hygienic, it'll just be contaminated again, and people will be sick, people will end up back in the hospital, children will end up missing days of school, farmers lose productivity.
So after that long walk from the water, what do you do with it once you get it up here?
Cook.
Cook?
Yes.
Are you going to cook anything right now?
Yes. Coincide and take some taro, fish and come and take out the skin.
And then use the water to cook
Yes,
that?
and wash and put in saucepan.
So she's going to use the water to wash the food?
Yes.
People come back from gardens, you're very hungry, you don't have time to wash your hands, there's no water to wash your hands, you go straight to the dish, pick up a plate, dish your food. That's how easy diseases spread.
It's easy to see how quickly contaminated water can spread through the village. Just the one bucket of water that we brought back was used for so many different things. For cooking, cleaning, bathing, drinking. One bucket of contaminated water would affect almost everyone in the village.
This issue of clean water, we now know that it's linked to nutrition outcomes a lot. And we now know that without clean water, you have children who are born who will never grow to the height that they're supposed to be because their poor bodies just can't really break down nutrients the way that a healthy body would be able to.
You know, when a child is malnourished, they're not just malnourished because they don't have enough food. Even if they have enough of the right food, if they're not drinking clean water and living in an environment where sanitation is present and using proper hygiene practices, they literally lose the ability to absorb nutrition. And that's why this 1 in 5 number of children who are actually dying from undernutrition is directly attributable to lack of clean water and proper sanitation.
But every day, the equivalent of 50 jumbo jets crashing and killing everybody on board is equivalent to the number of children who die from preventable diseases. And for many of those children, it comes down to fresh potable water. And it's just such a simple, basic thing. And it's life-changing.
As hard as they work to get this water, it still has the potential to kill them.
The stories featured in this series represent the mission of Adra International. At Adra, we believe that everyone deserves health, safety, and the ability to provide for their family, regardless of circumstance. Following in Christ's footsteps, we serve our brothers and sisters worldwide through food and clean water access, education, establishing ways to earn an income, and disaster response. To learn more, visit us online at adra.org.
There are so many things that are easy to take for granted when it comes to clean water. One of the first things I did when the plane landed on this tropical island was to go to the small general store and buy a supply of bottled water, a luxury that most families on this island could never even imagine being able to afford. But access to clean water isn't the only problem these families face.
we don't talk about water, we talk about WASH, water, sanitation, and hygiene. Because in reality, while almost 800 million don't have access to clean water, more than 2.5 billion people don't have access to sanitation. You know, and you may think offhand, sure, you know, you need water to live, but what about a toilet? Because what that means, there are more people in this world that have a cell phone than have a toilet in their home.
Thomas Belden was born and raised in Vanuatu, and now helps bring clean water and sanitation to the families here that don't have it. He took me deep into the heart of Tanna Island to visit a village that has changed very little, even as the rest of the island slowly modernizes.
This looks like we're just driving through one big garden, you know, with the trees all over and it's green everywhere. As we go further and further in, the roads seem to get smaller and smaller.
In rural Tanna, there are still places where people are living the way they have lived for thousands of years. Although only a few of these villages remain, they are a link to the island's rich history. Life in these villages is surprisingly similar to life around the rest of the island. Families here share simple grass huts, some reserved for sleeping and others reserved for cooking and keeping food. Tree houses sit high above the thick forest canopy and provide a lookout to the surrounding land. A lack of modern conveniences means a simpler way of life, but also means a lack of knowledge about sanitation and hygiene. The villages here still use a type of toilet that leads to very unsanitary conditions.
This type of toilet we call a bush toilet.
A bush toilet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a little house, or sometimes we just have some leaves cover, and then we have sticks, and then there's a hole, and then we you squat on the sticks, and then you do the business. So this is the bathroom, local bathroom. So we have only 2 platforms, and people just can come in.
And there's just a hole inside.
Yeah.
You have to aim.
Yeah, aim. That's right. You aim correctly, and everything will go well. But if you aim badly, then you'll mess up the.
For everyone else.
For everyone else, and when somebody comes in and see the mess, and they can use out in the bush rather than this one. So.
In Middle Bush, because it's a rural area, most of the houses have toilets outside, and most of the households use open pit, and an open pit is just a dark hole. It attracts insects and animals like cockroaches, rats, you have flies going into the toilet, and then these insects then walk out from the pit, and then they go straight into the kitchens.
With all the water systems that we do, we also bring in sanitation, and we train people in better sanitation techniques that not only leads to a reduction in waterborne diseases and other diseases through contaminated food or other things of cooking techniques and washing techniques. So it actually becomes a holistic thing. Mothers are healthier, therefore when they get pregnant they're healthier, therefore they're healthier throughout their pregnancy, which means they deliver babies that are stronger and healthier. We know that if the baby in that first 1,000 days has better nutrition and better sanitation, then they're less vulnerable to different diseases of diabetes and cancers and other diseases later in life. And so it actually changes the whole community in a very powerful and a very real way. Water can never be underestimated.
A lot of what we do is connected to toilets, be they toilets in the ground or some other kind of structure, because you can't just build the same toilet everywhere. It has to be according to what communities are going to use.
Thomas took me to a site where latrines were being built for one of the villages.
Yeah, they're actually building the seat riser for the toilets.
And these toilets are going to be used right here in this village?
This toilet will be used right here in this village.
So you can't just go in there, plop a toilet and say, hey, use it. Why? You have to explain to people, why is this necessary? Why is it important? And I tell you what, 100% of the time, people start seeing changes, they're bought into it, and they want to learn more, and they want to do more. And that's how you have communities that end up thriving.
Even some of these old ladies are kind of scared to use the toilet now. They say, oh, these are black men toilets, so a bit scared because it's not used.
So there's a fear that some of them have when it comes to using something as what we would think of as a simple household appliance, a toilet.
Yeah.
There's some fear.
That's right.
And then what was new for the older people, because these are going to be the first time they're going to use these toilets, the kids are going to grow up using toilets. So for them, when they become older,
they're
going to be used to toilets, and that's going to be, that sanitation and hygiene is going to be what they're used to at that point.
That's right.
So this is the risers.
Yeah, this is the seat riser. So what we're going to do is, so I just show you how we're going to use that or install that in a toilet. So we have a hole, a duct up, and then we put this slab on. This slab on, and then we feed in the seat riser. That's it. We feed in the seat riser, and then we put a little cement around here, wet cement. Yeah, so I'll show you one of the structure been made by the boys. So this is it. You have the wall duct. This is the hole down here, and the fan pipe. And at the top of the fan pipe, we'll put the fly screen, and so that any flies goes in the bit, and then saw the light up there, and you want to get to the light, but it hit the screen, and then stay there and then tie. And we have the seat cover, which covers after the use. They can cover it so that no flies or rats can access the waste here and spread in the community.
Clean water is not enough. If people aren't using improved latrines, that water is going to eventually be contaminated.
Along with sanitation and being able to have access to, like, using a proper toilet or using some sort of facility like a latrine that is built in the ground. Those are two of the really kind of like basic core level needs that people have to just maintain some kind of health.
To see how schools in Vanuatu are helping bring clean water and healthy sanitation practices to their students, I visited Lokaru Primary School and met with the principal, Catherine Casso. She showed me the new pit latrines with seat risers that have recently been installed.
So if these toilets weren't here, then where would the children go to the bathroom, or where would they?
Okay, we've got some push toilets out of the yard where we use local materials, and we use the stamp of coconuts as a seat riser for them to sit on here.
So these bush toilets aren't exactly as nice as these.
These, yes.
You have a lot of girls around the world who don't go to school because there's no toilet for them. So what happens when they really need to use a facility that is really geared towards them? They literally just don't go to school.
The stories featured in this series represent the mission of Adra International. At Adra, we believe that everyone deserves health, safety, and the ability to provide for their family, regardless of circumstance. Following in Christ's footsteps, we serve our brothers and sisters worldwide through food and clean water access, education, establishing ways to earn an income, and disaster response. To learn more, visit us online at adra.org.
Part of bringing clean water and sanitation to rural communities is about keeping kids in school. Education is one of the best ways out of poverty for these kids. But in order to get an education, they've got to spend time in the classroom. 443 million school days are lost each year because kids around the world are sick due to waterborne illness. Even the kids that are able to fit school in a day filled with carrying water, and those who are able to stay healthy despite a lack of good hygiene and sanitation, struggle to stay in schools if the schools themselves don't have toilets and clean water. Half of the primary schools in the developing world do not have bathrooms, a problem for all of the kids, but especially girls, who usually drop out by the time they are 11 or 12 years old. Lokaru School has recently built 3 sanitary pit latrines. and has a newly installed pump that brings clean water from a tank up the hill from the school. Thomas took me to see a water tank being built, which will supply clean water to all of the families in the villages below.
So what are we looking at right here?
This one is a 22,500 liter water tank, cement tank.
So as soon as the water comes up from the spring, it'll be housed and protected from things contaminating it. And so you're getting it when it's freshest.
That's right.
And then it gets pumped up and into the people's homes.
When we bring fresh water to a community, it just changes that community. It's a life-changing experience. Imagine if all your life you felt unwell and suddenly you actually feel well within yourself and you no longer got that stomach ache or that gastric upset, or you know that you no longer are you going to lose one of your children due to waterborne diseases, but your family's going to remain healthy and safe and clean.
If people are educated about hygiene and sanitation and can analyze for themselves, all the health problems and find solutions, then we hope that in 6 months' time, the transformation in their hygiene and sanitation practices will help improve their lives.
The impact of not having water and sanitation, having good hygiene practices, it affects the economies of countries. It breaks down healthcare systems. It empties schools. It dramatically affects women and children more than anyone else. The influence is so pervasive over every area of life.
In Vanuatu, the interconnectedness of life is so clear. Something beautiful formed from something so powerful. And that same power is in the spirit of the people that live here. The power to build and rebuild, to survive, even against the odds.
I just love people. I just want to do something good for others. See people, come up and say, hey, this has impacted my life. Having people come up and tell me that it's changed their lives.
I can choose to say, well, there's no hope for the world. Or I can choose to say, well, maybe I can't change the world, but through living my life, I can change the lives of people that I come in contact with. Most social movements started with passionate people who are willing to stand up and give a voice to justice and to reach out to make a difference. And if we can start that movement as a church and bring our church and other denominations and other faiths on board with that, and we can find a common voice, then we can actually affect change.